yeah, that's why we need to work with each other and support each other, and just we need to build each other up and talk about each other's virtues, because we don't get that enough, and we need to appreciate each other. Oh, and I'm working with Royal, Raising Our Youth as Leaders, and so I'm in the KCJC, King County Juvenile Center, but I get to work with exclusively Black and brown children, so I'm happy to be a paid mentor and just proud to have that job.
The last one before we go to Pat. Yeah, hello, my name is Paul, and one of the things that really struck me from the movie tonight was that prison industrial complex grossed $1.3 billion of profit. And guess where that's all coming from? It's from that's from us, the taxpayers, that's right. And we gotta stop that, man. That's above running these prisons. They're making profit, it's trickling up. It's not trickling down. So that really concerned me. I mean, I knew a lot of other stuff that was going on in there, but that one was the one that really struck me. But as far as getting together and supporting each other, there was a group that met this last Sunday, Neighborhood Action Committees. It's to try to work against the fear that the Trump presidency and the incoming presidency has caused in a lot of us, in communities that are in danger or communities that are at risk. And so the whole city's covered. We got, I think, 13 districts. There's local meetings, people getting together, self-directed, trying to work with each other to do things day to day to support each other. I'll put a little link in the Facebook post on this if anyone's interested or talk to me tonight, and I can get you hooked up with that, or get you some information. So I thank you all. This is really amazing to see everyone come together like this.
My name is Patty Fong, and I'm affiliated with community radio, KBCS 91.3. And I've been waiting for somebody to say something about media. I'd like to give a plug for community radio. I noticed in the film tonight that they featured Amy Goodman, and she broadcast a story about the young man who committed suicide. I think I remember hearing that story a while back, but I wonder how many people know that story. So I encourage you to listen to community radio, KBCS. It's 91.3 FM on your dial, and you can listen to it online if you can't get the broadcast. Because Amy Goodman broadcasts a lot of stories like this that the mainstream media doesn't touch. And we're really concerned about fake news these days. So I think you'll get the real deal with programs that we carry on KBCS. And we're a voice for the community. You can come to KBCS and be heard and create stories. So check us out, KBCS 91.3 FM, and listen to Amy Goodman. She's a good person. Thank you, and peace.
All right, we're going to go up to the panel now, and so we're going to let you guys do some speaking about some of what the film expressed, and also what you personally have dealt with. You want to go first, Mom?
I was gonna say young people first. You looking at me like I'm crazy. That's all right. I've actually avoided watching that film because I feel like I engage that story all day, every day, and so was thankful there was an opportunity in community watching instead of me at home by myself. To be able to cry in community with other Black and brown folks and community members. What it makes me think about is there's three things that I kind of organize my work around. Sustainability, resistance, and then I tie all that to knowledge. And what struck me about the film is there was a part where one of the speakers was saying, we shouldn't be asking why they are so strong, we should be asking why we're so weak. And that really resonates with me as someone who works with young folks. I focus my practice as an attorney on working with juveniles who are fighting criminal cases, because so often it's those first cases you get as a juvenile that start locking you into the system. And those cases start at school sometimes. Our education system is frequently used as a way to catch young Black and brown people, whether that's labeling them as special ed, or it's catching them up with something at school, or it's the fact that we have so-called school resource officers who are police officers in the building there to catch them for behaviors that, as a teacher, we could otherwise deal with simply by providing better education. I mean, students get bored. You know, and what do we expect them to do when they get bored? What do we do when we get bored? We get on Facebook. You know, so young people in that regard are really no different than us. And so I think about, I'll start with resistance, in the sense that we have to be vigilant, not just about where we spend our money, but who we spend our time with, how we spend that time, what things we're willing to support. All the conversation about Trump versus Hillary kind of drives me crazy, because no matter how you spin it, we're voting for white imperialism. And that's a problem. We don't have a choice. And we just continue to deal with the symptoms of a system that has continued to perpetuate itself over and over. I think we talk about voting, but then we don't talk about voter disenfranchisement. Or how many people post the Voting Rights Act actually couldn't even vote this round. This was the first election we've had in terms of a presidential election since the VRA got totally gutted. And so what we've seen is the outcome of that. And so I think resistance means that we have to continue to put ourselves in places where we push back. And I often ask white folks, you know, what are you willing to sacrifice? It's dope that you came to the movie, it's dope that you participate in the conversation, but are you willing to sacrifice your job or your car or your house or your relationships with your family in order to be a part of a resistance that says we're going to set up a better system of opportunity? And I think that also goes for us as black and brown folks, but to be real, we sacrifice all day, every day. Sustainability for me means not just simply in the money or wealth context, but also our spiritual, physical, and mental health. Living day in and day out in the system is traumatic. And if we don't have spaces to take care of ourselves and heal ourselves, that's why I'm thankful for places like Africa Town, where we can talk about all the good knowledge that exists that actually allows us to move forward as better people. Because in reality, it's not all just dead black bodies. But that is the narrative that I think so many of our young people take on. It actually makes me sad to go to protests and have to watch the 6th and 7th graders that I work with at Washington Middle School cry out of fear of seeing, of potentially being that next dead black body. That's sad. We cheer them on when they say good, powerful things, but reality is our little people shouldn't have to be doing that. Right. So I think we have to start to build our own sustainability, and it has to look different now. When I think about the Montgomery bus boycott, which we often lift up as like one of the powerful moments in the civil rights movement, all those folks lived in the same area. So to boycott the buses meant I could still go down to, you know, Aunt Susie's house and get a ride to work the next morning. It doesn't work like that anymore. So we need to start getting creative and innovative about what it means to be sustainable and resist in a time that we're built in a social media era. But we don't all live in the central district. Or we don't all live, you know, we're not close to each other. But really, for me personally, a lot of what I focus my time and energy on is knowledge. I get a lot of emails asking from people for me to take their case in court, far more than I could ever actually take on and far more than I could financially actually pay the court costs to do. And so my focus as an attorney is how do I enable people to litigate their own cases? And that has actually been an incredibly effective strategy in other places for folks to be able to do that themselves. So when I sit down with young folks who are having to deal with attorneys who they don't trust, well, what do you want the court to know, and now how can I help you build your own case around that? I think is really essential to us. It's knowledge. Knowledge is power, and that's part of what I got from the film, is knowing what is going on is actually powerful. Being able to know what companies are buying into our dehumanization and choosing to divest from those companies is powerful. When we look at something like the North Dakota Access Pipeline and how that's actually been an effective strategy forward, it's because people have been willing to divest from those banks that are actually investing in that pipeline. That battle's far from won, but I think it's a good example of what our movements can look like.
And they refer to that as hashtag bank exit. So we'll be seeing that, and that's when people withdraw their funds from those banks.
There you go. I wanted to thank that sister, I don't know if she's still sitting there, who talked about the conversations right in that section over there. She's gone. Anyway, she said that we've been having conversations like that for many years. Actually, we've been having conversations like that for centuries since our arrival here. That's why we're still here and surviving and thriving in many cases. You know, I think being woke takes a lot of work, but being asleep takes even more work. And one of the things that forums like this, and I'm very grateful and thankful. I told Dre, anytime he asks me to do anything, I'm there. But the real work takes place once we leave here and we're on our own, because that's when we make those very difficult choices in terms of where we spend our money, how we spend our money, what kind of documentaries that we buy. One of the biggest crimes in our society today is the media, and the biggest victims of those crimes are African American women. For centuries, they've portrayed us in crazy ways, but today, what's unique about it is the media is owned by about 5 or 6 huge corporations. And one of the things they're doing is through these reality TV shows, is they show African American women, the queens, the mothers of civilization, in the most demeaning ways possible, and they do it with that. Somebody mentioned something about the war on drugs. One of the things that the government did is it wasn't just the crack cocaine epidemic, which they flooded African American communities to finance a war in South America, and knowing exactly what it was going to cause, the continued buildup of that prison industrial complex. They did that 50, 60 years ago with heroin and the Black Panther Party. The same thing. There's documents in the State Department that say America's top priority is keeping black people from feeling good about ourselves. That's been the reality of this country for 500 years, not 400 years since our arrival, but 100 years before that, when they almost decimated our Native American brothers and sisters. So one of the things that we've got to do, and I work for King County government, and if I'm not on the verge of being fired on a regular basis, I'm not doing my job, really. I'm serious about that. And it's a constant struggle, probably for all of us, the work that we do, how we do that work. To the white people in the audience, this does affect you. You don't know it, but one of the things that we have to do as people of color is develop a sixth sense so that we can predict what you're going to do oftentimes before it even is a conscious thought in your mind. That's a survival instinct on our part. So it does, to be so easily predictable, it does affect you. And as somebody said, you've got to do your own work. You've got skin in the game, not as much as us, but you do have skin in the game. And you've got to be willing to lay it down. To my Native American brothers and sisters, Asian American brothers and sisters, Latino brothers and sisters, let's not fall for the okie doke where they play us against each other. Because one of the dynamics that has happened in America, whether it's people that come here recently or other people of color, the concept is that, well, as long as we're above them, you know, talking about us, we're okay. So we end up getting played against each other. Don't fall for that because they dogged all of us. King County spending, and I'm not trying to discourage anybody from contacting your legislators or your elected officials, but they know damn well that they've disenfranchised a disproportionate number of us from even being able to vote, which is why they will spend $210 million on a facility that locks up kids.
Right.
When everybody knows that the worst thing that you can do, the worst thing that you can do to a young person is to incarcerate them. The only thing that it guarantees is that their life outcomes will be even worse. Lastly, there's some good brothers and sisters in this room, some of whom I've had the privilege of working with over the years. I won't go over them by names, and Reverend Walden, though I have to acknowledge her because she was doing this work when many of us were children. There's a great purpose in a multicultural movement, and I think that's the only way that this is going to shift. But to be real, every empire has its rise and its fall, and we're seeing the fall of this empire now. And I've got to be honest, and I'll close on this, that I'm tired of, I've never done this, but I don't beg or plead for white folks to accept me as a human being. I refuse to do that. that's demeaning in and of itself. I would rather build relationships and deal with the healing of the trauma that we as black men and black women have been through, and the way we've been pitted against each other for 400 years. That whole Willie Lynch thing, some people say it's real, some people say it's not. The reason that there's some debate over it is because it's so accurate. They said, if you implement this policy, it will be effective for about 300 years. 300 years is what was that, 1712 or 1714, something like that? That's right now. And again, we're in more crisis than we've ever been before. I think one of the things that we need to do is that right now on 3rd and Pine, on Rainier and Henderson, at a Renton Transit Center, there are many disenfranchised young brothers and sisters. The way that the system is set up, they're not going to do anything with them until they do something egregious enough in their eyes so they can pull them into that juvenile justice system. But Mr. Jimerson and I were at a clemency hearing this morning, and you know, I've been going up to Monroe and the youth detention facility, King County Jail, Clallam Bay, Cedar Creek for many years, and I'm not going to say some of the most brilliant black folks that I've ever met are in those facilities. Some of the most brilliant people that I've ever met are in some of those facilities. But what strikes me is something is drastically wrong if somebody has to be incarcerated to gather their own thoughts, to figure out the reality of our history, to realize that this educational system that we've all been a part of is not designed to maximize the critical or analytical thinking skills of any of us. That the law enforcement, as we see it today, came out of the slave patrols of 300-400 years ago. And it makes sense that we continue to have some of the same difficulties with them that we do now. And lastly, the whole thing about the media. It's killing our minds. The only way that the indoctrination of our people can work is if they distract us with crazy stuff like this president-elect. He had his own show. Be honest, how many folks in this room, be honest, how many of the folks in this room ever watched that show that Trump used to do? Come on now, thank you. Okay. If you take a really analytical look at television and the media and look at what they're indoctrinating us with, it's no wonder that it's so hard for us to be woke. So with our kids, with ourselves, that work has to start individually in the books that we read. Thank you, Paul, for raising